Consider those individuals who, without a single uttered command, can subtly alter the atmosphere of any space. Not through demands, but through a quiet, almost imperceptible recalibration of their presence. They withdraw, and suddenly, the dynamics shift. Others feel the void, question their own footing, and a chase, a yearning, begins. Imagine for a moment, this power was yours. What if, instead of the knee-jerk response, you chose measured silence, instead of outward eruption, an inward retreat? Herein lies a profound truth. When your constant availability ceases, emotionally, physically, psychologically, the world around you often teeters into a disquieting crisis. Why? Because many have unknowingly built their sense of control upon your predictability, your immediate reactions. The day you consciously withdraw, you rewrite the rules of engagement. Those who believed they had you mapped suddenly find themselves in uncharted territory, realizing they perhaps never truly saw you. As Carl Jung illuminated, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves. Thus, when you make yourself less accessible, observe carefully who becomes agitated, who feels the sting of irritation, who attempts to provoke a familiar emotional response. Their unease often says more about their internal landscape and dependencies than about your transformation. It reveals perhaps the extent to which you were unknowingly tethered. For too long, many of us are ensnared in the emotional availability trap. We've offered a yes when our core whispered no, replied instantly even when our reserves were depleted, all to appease, to maintain a semblance of peace, or to cling to connections with those who, in truth, were never truly present for us. Each act of forced compliance, each immediate emotional surrender is a parcel of your vital energy gifted away. The outcome? A deep-seated weariness, a persistent frustration, an indefinable hollowness. The reason is stark. You've been overly generous with your essence to those who may not even value a moment of your sacred silence. This is not a call to hermetism. It is an invitation to choose yourself. It is the essence of what Jung termed individuation, the courageous journey toward becoming an integrated, authentic, and complete self. This transformative process ignites when you grasp that your silence, your deliberate withdrawal, can resonate more powerfully than a torrent of words. When this withdrawal springs from awareness, not from a desire to escape, it becomes an act of immense personal power. So, I ask you, with earnest sincerity, how much longer will you allow your emotions to be the strings by which others direct your dance? How much longer will you flinch and react each time an old wound is prodded? Perhaps the time has come to sever those strings, to consciously withdraw, to embrace the enigmatic power of your own presence. Because when you cease to be universally available, the very fabric of your reality begins to change. You see, we are often taught that our value is intrinsically linked to our accessibility. Yet, this relentless availability is not a badge of honor. It is often a self-imposed confinement. It renders you predictable, a tool, an emotional first aid kit for others to use at will, only to be set aside once their immediate need is met. We operate under the profound misapprehension that being perpetually present for everyone will ensure someone is present for us. Reality rarely confirms this belief. Carl Jung spoke of the persona, the carefully constructed mask we present to the world for acceptance, for love. It is this very persona that can chain us to a pattern of over-availability, compelling us to say, "I'm fine," even as we are inwardly fragmenting. We over-explain, we justify, we defend, as if the world is entitled to our every moment, our every thought. But the more you stand at the center of others' narratives, the further you drift from your own. This constant outward focus is a subtle, insidious form of self-abandonment, a veiled plea for approval, a desperate attempt to sidestep rejection. Jung also conceptualized psychic energy as a finite, precious resource. Every thought, every emotion, every action depletes a portion of it. Are you consciously directing this life force? Or are you allowing external stimuli to dictate its expenditure? Each impulsive retort, each defense against an unwarranted criticism, each foray into a fruitless debate, each endeavor to win over those who do not truly see you. This is psychic energy squandered. And as Jung astutely observed, that which you resist persists. The more compulsively you react, the more deeply you entangle yourself. Those who feel perpetually emotionally drained are not inherently weak. Often, they are simply misallocating their most vital asset. And in a state of vulnerability, you become an easy target for those who instinctively sense and exploit your unguarded energy. A healthy psyche, according to Jung, possesses the wisdom to conserve and channel its energy. This wisdom manifests as the ability to articulate a no without the burden of guilt, to embrace silence without the fear of appearing cowardly, to pause and observe before plunging into action. True strength is not found in the reaction, but in the deliberate choice of when and how to act. This level of discernment is attainable only when you cultivate a deep enough self-awareness to recognize your own ingrained impulses. How many restless nights have been lost to replaying unresolved conflicts, to agonizing over words unsaid or misspoken? This is your energy hemorrhaging without return, resuscitating specters of the past that should have long been laid to rest, fueling dynamics that persist only because you continue to engage. Psychic energy is your personal force field. When well maintained, it projects an undeniable presence. You can enter a space and command a quiet respect without uttering a syllable. But if mismanaged, you become diffuse, reactive, and fragile. And the world, in its often unthinking way, can be unsparing towards those who readily yield. Therefore, begin the practice of observing your triggers. What incites an automatic response? What causes you to lose your inner equilibrium? These are the precise junctures where your energy leaks, and consequently, where your most important inner work lies. The goal is not to become cold or detached, but to become discerning, to reclaim sovereignty over your inner realm. And here we touch upon one of Jung's most profound insights. When you conserve your energy, you disrupt the projections that others habitually cast upon you. This disruption is deeply unsettling for many. For now, we venture into the shadowy terrain of unspoken manipulation. You may believe you are in control, that your reactions are purely your own conscious decisions. But the reality is often more complex, more shadowed. Many of our emotional responses are, in fact, conditioned programs, and those who intuitively or consciously understand this can subtly influence you with surprising ease. Opportunistic individuals don't necessarily need to resort to overt aggression or coercion. They merely need to activate the emotional buttons you've left exposed, and you react reliably every time. Jung termed this projection, the psychological mechanism whereby individuals attribute to others the qualities, feelings, or thoughts they cannot acknowledge within themselves. But there's a reciprocal aspect. While others project onto you, you become the screen for their inner dramas. The more universally emotionally available you are, the more you serve as a blank canvas for these projections. Consider the friend who only materializes during their crises, or the partner who consistently relies on you to resolve their turmoil, or the acquaintance whose praise is contingent upon your utility. None of this is accidental. They are not necessarily connecting with the authentic you, but with a specific idea of you, a role you have, perhaps unconsciously, agreed to fulfill. And why this agreement? Often it stems from a fear of disappointing, a fear of not being loved, a fear of abandonment. The most potent forms of manipulation seldom involve raised voices. They often unfold in the quiet, insidious pressure of guilt. When you feel an obligation to cater to another, when you believe you must be available, must help, must understand, even when it means sacrificing your own well-being, this is the critical juncture. The manipulator doesn't always need to exert direct control. They merely need you to perpetuate your pattern of reactive compliance. But when you consciously choose to stop reacting, the entire dynamic shatters. When you begin to articulate a clear no, to respond with considered silence, to withdraw rather than over-explain, the projections begin to lose their hold. The mask they've placed upon you starts to slip, and this leaves them profoundly unsettled, for they no longer recognize the you they thought they knew. And more profoundly, They are inadvertently forced to confront their own inner landscape, a prospect not everyone is prepared for. Your newfound unavailability becomes a perceived threat because it compels others to face their own emptiness, their own unaddressed needs. The silence you now offer amplifies the internal cacophony they've been trying to avoid. And then may come the backlash, the criticism, the emotional ultimatums, not necessarily because you are in the wrong, but because you've ceased to be their convenient mirror. Jung famously stated, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." When you withdraw, when you cease to fuel the old, depleting cycles, the shadow aspects of the other, and perhaps your own, begin to surface. And this can be deeply uncomfortable for those who have consistently used you as an escape from their own inner work. But what of you in this process? Are you prepared to navigate the discomfort of being misunderstood, perhaps even ostracized or judged, as you stand firm in protecting your inner space? Are you willing to embrace the silence that often follows such ruptures? Because it is precisely within that potent silence that a new, more authentic form of power is conceived. And this is the threshold we now approach. You will begin to understand why this self-possessed silence can be the most formidable instrument of the human psyche, and how it irrevocably alters the interplay between you and the external world. The modern world pulses with an incessant, overwhelming noise. Everyone clamors to be heard, to react instantaneously, to prevail in often meaningless debates, to assert their viewpoint, even at the expense of their own tranquility. Yet, there exists a power, known to few and mastered by even fewer, the profound power of intentional silence. This is not the silence born of passivity or fear, but a conscious, strategic, and luminously clear silence. It's the kind of silence that is not a mere absence, but an amplified, resonant presence. Carl Jung perceived silence not as an empty void, but as the fertile soil for profound inner transformation. When you consciously cease your habitual reactions, you begin to truly observe. And in this observation, patterns that were previously obscured come into sharp focus. Recurring emotional loops, subtle games of manipulation, entrenched cycles of self-sabotage. Silence cultivates lucidity, and this newfound clarity can be deeply unsettling to those who thrive on controlling or influencing others. Have you observed how some individuals become agitated when you don't immediately respond? When you refrain from lengthy explanations? When you simply and quietly recede? This isn't necessarily because they miss you in your entirety. It's often because your silence disrupts their accustomed narrative control. As long as you are engaged in speaking, explaining, or reacting, you remain a player in their game. But when you choose silence, you fundamentally change the rules. And this act can profoundly unbalance anyone who has, consciously or unconsciously, relied on your predictable reactions. True silence is far more than the mere absence of speech. It is the mastery of one's own energy. It is the deliberate refusal to be ensnared and depleted by the emotional currents of others. It is the conscious decision to disengage from battles that are not worth your inner peace or your vital awareness. Jung understood that the path of individuation, the sacred process of becoming your most authentic self, necessitates this very distancing from the collective's often unconscious scripts. It requires you to disidentify from the persona, the mask, and to walk for a time in your own solitary company. And this is precisely the journey you embark upon when you decide to become consciously unavailable. You are not fleeing the world. You are, in fact, returning to the core of your own being. It is at this pivotal juncture that you cease to be merely a reactor to external stimuli and begin to emerge as the conscious creator of your experience. You are no longer shaped by circumstances. Instead, you begin to shape your reality from the wellspring of your own inner truth. Those who find your newfound absence discomforting often reveal, in their unease, that they never truly desired you. They desired the role you played, the function you served. And now that you no longer conform to that prescribed role, they are at a loss. And in that loss, for you, lies profound liberation. You may shed certain connections, but you will in turn discover your authentic self. You may distance yourself from familiar environments, but you will reconnect with your deepest essence. You may be misunderstood, judged, or even resented, but ultimately, you will begin to be genuinely respected, because when you are no longer indiscriminately available for anything and everything, you become inherently valuable, rare, and unforgettable. And make no mistake, this is not a diminishment, but a rebirth, a new, more authentic beginning. It is the commencement of a life where you are no longer a repository for emotional crumbs, a participant in depleting mind games, or a filler of voids disguised as affection. Now you consciously choose to accept only that which resonates with your peace, your truth, your wholeness. And if you have journeyed this far into these reflections, it signifies that a part of you is already stirring, already prepared for this new, more sovereign path. A part of you has already glimpsed the truth that being loved or accepted means little if, in exchange, you must abandon the core of who you are. And that true, unwavering self-love ignites the moment you choose yourself, unequivocally, even if it means embracing the solitude of your own company for a while. Now, I invite you to reflect. Are you truly ready to be misunderstood, perhaps even rejected or judged, in the sacred name of your inner freedom? Are you willing to embrace the inherent price of authentically being you? If this message has resonated with you, if it has struck a chord of truth deep within, acknowledge it. Perhaps in the quiet of your own heart, or by affirming in the comments below, "I choose my peace." Let us see how many of us are truly ready to embark on this courageous transition. And remember, the journey continues. The next step is crucial, more so than you might imagine. I'll see you there.